Okay, folks, let's get into some of the basics of actually doing recording. And again, if you are experienced, you're going to know most of this stuff, but maybe you want to change to Studio One and see how Studio One does it. And you can listen anyway and go through this, because I found that sometimes I go to tutorials and, oh, I know this, and then the person says something and I'm like, well, I didn't know that. So there's always beneficial stuff. So if you want to hang in there, hang in there. I will be going into later punching in and punching out and metronomes and stuff like that. But right now I just want to do some basic recording and level setting and how you set your I/O up from your audio interface. So let's get into that now. What we are seeing here is Studio One. Yes. This is version 4.6. That's because the 5 songs that I have out there were recorded and mastered in 4.6. I do have Studio One 5.5, and all my new recordings will be using 5.5, and might be 5.6 out there, I'm not sure. But anyway, so I just wanted to make a note that this is 4.6. Okay, so now, what do we do when we get here? Now, this is my song Wonderland, and it's my tutorial version, so anything I'm doing, I'm not destroying my song, because I wouldn't want to destroy my song. And we're going to go through some things real quick. Number one, if you've created a new song, this would all be blank, and then you add a track, and say you add an audio track, and look at my track tutorials for all the details of adding tracks, types of tracks, and stuff like that. But we're going to work with pretty much audio track and a mono track and a stereo track for this tutorial. So right here, track 57 and track 58 I created prior to doing this recording, and this one 57 is a mono track and 58 is a stereo track, so we can look at both examples. And how I did that was up here, track, it says add mono track and add stereo track audio. Okay, so I already did that. Now, before we do any recording, we have to make sure that our I/O in this software, in this DAW, is set up correctly to do what we want. So in Studio One, and there are ways to do it in Pro Tools and all the other ones, but I'm showing it here, but it is pretty much the same. Okay, so I'm going to, over here on the left, there's this little box that says I/O. I clicked on it and it brings up this dialog box. And you can also go to preferences and get to there too. So what is this? This is where you assign your hardware, your audio interface hardware inputs to anything you want to, and you can set it up, and so you can set up multiple descriptive paths, channels, whatever you want to call it, that allow you to know that mic 5 is a snare drum. And that's what this does. So at the top here is actually your audio interface. Now remember, I have 192, which is 8 inputs, and I have Focusrite Octapre 8, that's another 8 inputs. So up here we have mic instrument 1, mic instrument 2, mic 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Spadifit, that's how I pronounce it. That's the digital cable, coax cable, that you would use if you're doing digital input, and there's an input left and an input right. Then I have ADAT1 through ADAT8, and ADAT is just the extension, that's the Octapre. And then there's 9, 10, but I only go up to 8, and I could get another one. I said that earlier. Which one? Earlier or later? Earlier. So this is going to be your hardware. Now, if you have 2 inputs, if I say I have a Focusrite with 2 inputs, or a Persona, so I'm not sure if they make 2 inputs, it'll only show 2 inputs here. All the rest of the stuff won't be here. It may be here, but it's not going to be active. You won't be able to use it. So I don't know if it shows it all, or it's only the ones that are active. But anyway, this will be specifically at the top here, your audio interface. Over here on the left, you make your assignments. So I can say that, and I use mic 4 in my audio interface, and I call it Neumann mic, and that would be my Neumann 105. And I put here M, which is mono. And down here you can say add mono, add stereo. That would add another line here. Okay, that's not how you make these assignments here. It would just, I can page down, it would add another line after this AKG mic, which I'm not going to do. But that's, you can add a stereo input, and you can add a mono input. So basically here left is just your own descriptive way. So when you go over here to track 57 and you drop it down, and it won't work because this dialog's open, but we'll see it in a minute, and you drop it down, it's going to show you these descriptive titles that you created. So I can just like double click that and change it. Okay. So you don't have to remember, what was mic 6? Makes sense, right? It's cool. So the way you do this, if I wanted to take the Neumann mic and say, I'm not going to use mic 4 for some reason, I'm going to use mic 5. Well, I just click here on mic 5 and it moves that M, and that's a mono track, to mic 5. Now all of a sudden, when I drop down here on the track and it says Neumann mic, it is now mic 5. And you'll be able to see it here too. So this is your way of saying, here are my inputs, and here's what I'm using them for, so that you have a descriptive way over here on the track to know what it is. Enough said. The top one here is I added a stereo input, and it says input left right, and I didn't change the name of it, but obviously you need 2 inputs for stereo. So here it's using, I've assigned it to mic 1, mic 2, left right. So if I want to record stereo, and actually this microphone here is coming in stereo, and I'll explain why, and then we'll be able to see that. If I want to record stereo, I have to eat up 2 inputs. And just so you know, the mic here and mic here, and also says INST, /INST. That means it also takes in a 1/4-inch plug. So these other mics here that don't say that, they all take XLR. If you don't know what an XLR is, it's the fat one. I don't have an example right here in front of me. It's kind of like a fat round thing and has 3 prongs in it because it's balanced, because there's a ground in it. That's an XLR. And then a 1/4-inch plug would be like your guitar cable. And it's kind of cool because these first 2 inputs in the 192 accept both XLR or like a guitar cable. So if I'm doing a direct line in with a bass, I can just take the bass guitar cable and just plug it into 1 or 2, and that's fine. And again, just because I set this up as stereo doesn't mean I have to use it as stereo. If you look right below it, okay, I created a general purpose input description, and I've assigned it to mic 1. And I created a guitar one, and I assigned it to mic 2. So when I drop down general purpose, I'm going to get mic 1 over here in the track, and we'll see that. When I drop down and I select guitar, I'm going to get mic 2. If I drop down in a stereo track, which is this track 58, I'm going to see left, right, and it's going to be 1 and 2. And it could be anything. So this is where you assign your descriptive titles to the actual audio interface. And there's a nice little picture here of the Studio 192. Okay, enough of that. But this is important because this is, once you set this up, this is what you're going to be working with. You're not going to open up this dialog box again. So start simple, figure it out, test yourself out, see how it goes. Outputs is another tab here. I only have 1 line here. It's the main. So I'm only like, I'm not outputting. I could output to other channels in the audio interface and say go to, take something out and go to another hardware thing like a reverb and come back into another channel so I can, do outbound stuff outside of the DAW, hardware-wise, and come back in. But I don't do that. I just mix down. So I have 1 line here. It says main, and it is the left out and the right out of the main output here on the console. Pretty straightforward, but you can add as many as you want here. Okay, so that's that. That's how you set up your audio interface I/O. I/O being input output. Okay, so now I'm going to cancel that. And we're going to come back here. And before we, well, just to prove the point. Okay, so if I was going to record on this track 57, okay, it says, see here, it says general purpose. If I drop, now general purpose, remember, was mic 1. Or I'm sorry, input 1. And now look, if I drop it down, it shows the exact same thing that's in the I/O that I set up. Cool. Makes it very easy. So I can now say, okay, I want this track to take the microphone that's the Neumann microphone, microphone 4. And I'll change the Neumann mic description, and it will have to plug something into that input 4 for me to record something with. So that is how you do that. I'm going to go back to general purpose. And if I come down here to the next track, which is a stereo track, it says input left, right, LR. And That's the one I picked because that's the only stereo one that I had set up. Okay. Hopefully that helps in terms of how to set up I/O and how you assign it when you're going to record a track. Now, let's get into the next very, very important thing, the input levels, your gain level. So this is a console down here, and if you look at my other tutorials, I get more in depth into it. This is where you assign, this is your output console. This is where you assign your inserts, like your plugins and stuff like that, and reverb and all that kind of cool stuff. And I do have a tutorial on the plugins that I use, so if you want to check that out. Well, what's cool here is I just grab the end of this and I can pull it across. Ah, now we're talking. Okay, so you can put it anywhere you want. I'm going to put it there. Now you see these levels going up and down because that's me talking. So if I get louder, it's going to get louder. And if I go softer, it's going to go softer. Okay. So how do you set these? Well, the Studio 192 has those gain levels that you can set things with. But this is one thing I love about PreSonus. And maybe it's true about Pro Tools. I haven't been working Pro Tools for a while, so I don't know, and the other ones. But remember that gain input at the top left? It's here too. So basically, right now, I'm coming in, input 1 and input 2, which says it right here. Says it right here. And then here's my stereo one. Now, why is it showing the stereo 1 and 2? Because I'm coming in to 1 and 2, which happens to also be the stereo one. So it's the level is showing on the stereo input 2. Okay, not input 2, but input, comma, TOO. So how do I adjust this? Well, I don't have to go back to that interface. It's right here. So if I want to do this and highlight both of them, I can adjust my input level right here while I'm looking at the actual meter of the input. That to me is great. I don't have to lean down and do something. I don't have to leave this screen. I can just lower these things. Well, it's going to lower that one. And I can lower this one. And you can't hear me anymore. So I'm going to put them back up to where they were. I believe 48. And this guy. Now you can hear me again. Isn't that cool? Maybe little things really make me happy. But before I always had to lean down and turn the knob and look back up, and lean down and turn the knob and look back up. It takes time, and you have somebody stand there wanting to sing, getting impatient as you, the engineer. So anyway, I don't know. Do you actually go? I'm weird. If you don't know, I am a radical bohemian hippie. Talk about that another time. Check out my Radical Cathedral reality show on my channel. You'll get to know, like, I ain't looking at him anymore. Screw this. Oh, silly. Okay, so here, what's great is I can adjust the levels right here. That's awesome. Now, where do you want to adjust your levels to? Well, you want to have enough input gain, and I think what I'm doing right here is pretty good. Okay, so it's kind of like in the middle. I'm not going to get into details of every one of these parameters in the meter. What you don't want is you don't want it to peak where it's so loud that these bars are all the way up here, and these things here where these numbers are is telling me at certain points where my level is, and it turns red. If it turns red, you peaked, you clipped, not good, lower your input. Okay? Now, if you can't lower your input much more, then if it's a guitar player, maybe they have to lower the amp, or maybe, whatever. But wherever you do it, whether you do it from the source or you're doing it from here, you have to have your enough gain, but not too much gain. And your end result, and I always say do test records, especially vocals and stuff like that, so you see how much gain that you're actually getting in your track events. These things here that are already recorded are track events. So these are vocals on my song that are actually on the song. And if you look here in the green event box here, that's the signal that I recorded, the dark, waveform. And then everything else around that is headroom. Headroom. What's headroom? Headroom is, talk about head, because how much at the top space you know, that you have. So if you recorded something and it was this line here, not down here, this is a little better example of this was recorded not as hot, not as much gain as the one up here, so it's smaller. Now it's not that bad, but I would prefer more like this, you know, about halfway filling up the event. That way I can, and if I take this, and this is what you can do in Studio One, and I highlight this, and you look at my volume tutorial. I can take this little box here. Now I've recorded this and I want it louder. But say I only want this phrase louder and not the whole track, which I could do over here or down at the fader. So I can then say, okay, I want to give this a little more gain after the fact, and I can just pull this up and give it more gain. Or say it came in this hot, but it was a great performance. Okay, then I can just pull it back down. So if you can do all that, Gabriel, why would you care? Because if you record it too hot, and you want to make it hotter, you're gonna be blowing out your event. So no, rule of thumb, somewhere around there I think is good. And that's also true when you're final mixing everything down, that your final mix should have headroom, so when you go to mastering, there's room there to actually do the mastering. So let's do this. Let's see. So now we're talking about the level that you have and what your waveform is going to be looking like that you're going to have to work with later. Okay, so now I'm not going to go singing for you. So just pretend I'm a vocalist. I am a vocalist. Pretend I'm doing vocals. Okay, so I'm going to take track 57, which is an audio mono track. And I have it on general purpose. Oh, and why am I coming in two channels, two inputs? Because the way this works is, since it is a non-stereo input, if I only did it on the mic 1, you would only hear it on the left from the monitoring of the input. Obviously, if it came in on the left and as a mono track, it's still just going to be in the middle. But for the sake of not only hearing me on the left side or the right side of your headphones or whatever you're listening to, I'm coming in 2 tracks. So I actually split the cable of the mic into the input, so it's like going into 2 of the inputs. That's why it's here. But it's a good example for stereo. Okay, so let's do a record. So I'm going to place my cursor here. Okay, now I'm going to hit the record button. And now you can hear me, but you can also hear a delay behind me. And I have no delay on. Trust me. That's your latency we talked about. So basically, that is causing probably an annoyance to your vocalist, because when I want to sing, I keep hearing this slapback delay. So how do you get out of that? This button right next to the record button is the monitor button. It says monitor. And that's the monitor. That's where, remember, the audio signal, analog comes in, gets converted to digital. And if this is annoying you, then you'll I want to get rid of latency. And then it gets processed, and with that monitor button on, it says send back, the signal that's coming in, so the person can hear it in their headphones or whatever they're listening to, whether it's monitors too. So it comes back, and it's that travel time is the delay of this. So how do you get rid of it? Well, you can work with buffering, like I said, and look that up. But what I do is I turn this off. Okay? So now it's off, and that slapback is gone. Well, how come you can still hear me if the monitor is off? If you don't know this, now you're going to know it. It's because in that Studio 192 that you saw previously, remember that's a mixer. That is a mixer directly from the audio interface. So even though it does take the signal back from, if I push that monitor button, it's going to also capture that monitor reply back from the DAW, but it's going to give you latency. But if I turn it off, the mixer's still on. So if I do this right here, and this is one way to get rid of latency, really easy. And it's not going to affect the record. If I'm going to pull this out of the way real quick and get back to the 192, see here? This here, and the reason why it works, real quick, is this is the software interface of the hardware. It's direct. So when I talk into the microphone, it goes into the cable, into the 192 audio interface. This here doesn't, the screen is not going to the DAW. It's just right part of this thing. So basically, I'm talking into it, and it's giving me the signal immediately back. It's not converting it. It's analog to analog. It's just the same thing. So this way, the vocalists can hear themselves without that slapback, and everybody's happy. So that is why when you get an audio interface, you want to make sure that it probably has a mixer like that, and you can be able to turn off the monitor button on whatever DAW you're using and just work directly from the mixer of the audio interface to remove the latency without playing with buffering and stuff like that. Okay, I just wanted to bring that out because if you don't know that, you're going to really either have a very upset vocalist, or you being the vocalist be very upset. Some people can sing to that. I actually can sing to that slapback, but I still turn it off. Okay, so let's get to recording. Now, I just want to make a point here. Down here below here, there's a little thing that looks like a pin. And if I hover over it, it says auto punch. For this purpose, for your first recordings, if for some reason that pin is red, click on it. If I click on it, it'll go red. If I click on it, it'll go red. If I unclick on it, that means auto punch is on. If I unclick on it, then auto punch is off. It'll drive you crazy, and I've done this where I've did a recording, a bunch of recordings down the track, and I wanted to fix something in between one of them. So you're not going to re-record the whole thing. You're just going to punch it in and punch it out. And if you don't know what that means you're basically going to take a section somewhere on the recording, and in the olden days, you used to hit a button on the console. Yes, I'm old. And that would start to record, and then you would hit the button out and punch out. And we used to have a thing back when where who was the best punch in, punch out person to get it right on the timing, right between, and get it out in time. We used to like, oh, I did it, yeah. Well, anyway, you have auto punch now, and so if that's on, it'll drive you crazy. And when we talk about auto punch in a minute or so, you'll see why. And sometimes I do it and I have it on, I forget I have it on, I try to record something else, and nothing gets recorded. And there's a reason why. So just make sure that's off when you do your first recording. Okay, so we're ready to record my voice. Are we ready? Yes. So now I'm going to go, and I have a fader port. It's from Persona. It's fader port single one, which is a hardware thing with a fader and all kinds of buttons on it, so I can hit play and everything. I don't have to go down here to the transport down here. Okay, I can just do it from the fader port. And I have a fader port 16, which is 16 faders and stuff like that for when I'm doing more complex recording. But for now, I'm just using this. So I am going to go down here, and that's why I'm looking down. So I wanted to tell you I have this thing here. I'm going to hit the record button, and hopefully we don't destroy the whole world. Okay, here we go. Okay, so wait, I heard the music. I know why. Let me undo that. Because I'm going to hit the solo button. And there's a point here. You can actually record with the solo button on. So if you wanted to record something and you had a full song of everything, but the vocalist is like, can you just turn all that stuff off, please? All I want to hear is the guitar. So then you solo the guitar and you solo the vocalist, and they only hear the guitar, and it still works. So I wanted to point that out. Okay. Basically, I actually forgot, so I just made a whole thing about that. But it was kind of a good idea. Okay, let's see if we can do it again. Okay, I'm going to hit the record button. And now I am recording. Oops, I hit the stop button. Okay, so now he's getting very weird. Wasting your time. All right, I'm going to delete that. What happened was, and this is something else you should know. So he makes another mistake and he gets an idea. Oh, I'm going to cover my mistake. On my keyboard, the space bar, and I use a Mac 2012 Pro Tower, and the keyboard, the space button is actually the play button, so it's also the stop button. So I actually accidentally hit that. So if you have your keyboard being that way, and the ability of your keyboard to have the assignment of play, start and stop, or record, start and stop, and you're recording somebody, and in the middle of, be careful you don't accidentally do what I just did. I hit that space bar, and that's not cool. Okay, so we're going to try this one more time without hitting the space bar. I'll put the cursor back here. Okay, this is me recording, and you can see it coming in, and this is pretty straightforward stuff. So now I've recorded the vocal. Now I'm going to hit the stop. Okay, there it is. Now, look at the gain on this. This gain is like pretty low. I would never record that way. I would increase the volume here of this. I don't want to blow your eardrums out or mine, but this compared to this here at top, this to me is not enough to work with. I would increase my gain more, and obviously I put my gain about 3/4 the way up without clipping. So if you're doing a vocalist, have them sing a little bit, because some people, sing loud, some people don't. The other thing is when a vocalist sings, and we'll talk about this in a minute with vocals, they can't be doing this, singing here, then singing here, then singing here, then singing here. They need to stand in the same spot the whole time, and get used to doing that if they're not already. That way you can preserve your input level. Okay, so that was that. Again, now I can take this little box here in PreSonus Studio One and make it bigger, but I'd rather have the input come in somewhere around there. Okay, cool. All right, enough of that. Let's unsolo this. Let's turn this off, and let's do a stereo track. So I'm going to click the stereo one, and you can hear again the slapback. So I'm going to take the monitor off, and there we go. And you can see here, right here, that there's 2 inputs coming in because it's stereo. So I'm going to solo that. Now, why would you use a stereo track? And I talked about this in my track tutorial. Is say you're doing a keyboard, a real keyboard, like a Yamaha or something like that, and they almost all have left, right, out. And a lot of the sounds in a keyboard, strings or some things, will have different sounds across that stereo spectrum, and you want to capture that. Now sometimes I do keyboards and I'll take the left out, the mono out of the keyboard, and because I'm just doing strings, I'm putting it on a mono track, and I just want to put it to the left there as a little filler and a nice thing over there. That's being a producer, and I'll bring it in as a mono track. But let's just look at this for a second, and same thing right there, and hit the record button. And now I'm going to record a stereo track, and there it is. Okay, we'll stop that. And I can also increase this, and it'll increase both of them. And there's my stereo track. So say that's a nice keyboard coming in, or say it's somebody playing congas or bongos, and you have 2 microphones. Okay. Now, that's pretty much it for a stereo track and a mono track. I'm not going to go into instruments tracks and stuff like that. I'm only talking about straight recording in from your audio interface at this point. So an instrument track in Studio One is the same thing as like a MIDI track. Why they call it an instrument track, I'm not sure, but it's really a MIDI track. So anyway, turn this off, and this one thing that me, Gabriel, one thing that I do is I almost never, and put it in the comments, I almost never use a stereo track. Why? Well, the reason why is that if I'm using keyboards, generally I'll use the mono out, but or to say congas, I have 2 microphones on them, right? The big conga and the small conga, if you know what those are. And I will actually take one microphone into a mono input, and the other microphone into another mono input. Now I'm getting both signals, but I'm not forced into a stereo track. So I'll end up with 2 tracks, and then I can manage those 2 tracks individually. The thing that's a con to that, there's a pros and cons. A con to that would be if I'm making overall EQ changes and stuff like that, I got to do it to 2 tracks and have to do it evenly between the tracks. So it's a choice. Use a stereo track, and then you can manage both sides with one plugin and stuff like that, and your plugins will go into stereo mode when it's a stereo track, or do 2 individual tracks, which give you more flexibility in terms of the track, but then you have to do a little more work to make sure that you're managing the plugins and everything on those 2 tracks, because person or whoever is hearing it back as a stereo track, even though it's not a stereo track. So put your thoughts in on that one and everything, and we can get into some more stuff. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the different types of things you can record into these DAWs, and how I do it, and the things that I've learned from industry folks that I've known over the years. There was one really good friend of mine that I did some mixing with. We were doing another friend of mine's songs, and we were mixing at his place, and it was cool because I was watching somebody else do it. But what was really cool was that he used to, I don't think he does anymore, but he used to mix for Bon Jovi, John Bon Jovi. He used to say, yeah, I have to go over to John's house now and stuff like that. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I learned a lot from him. So to my point is, I'm going to show the things that I do, and hopefully that helps you, but obviously it's not the end all be all of the world. So these are the ways, and he showed me different ways of how to record an amplifier and stuff like that. And this is my younger days. And I'm like, this is all so cool. So hopefully, again, put comments in. Let's be civil. How do you do it? And what did you do? And let's help each other. Okay, on to the next